There's too many questions at once. Can you ask me one question at a time?
So how was your day?
It was good. I worked outside a lot and tried to prep my garden a little bit and hung out with the boys.
Oh, that's cool. So how are you prepping your garden?
So right now I have the spot marked off and I have leaves on top of it. I have probably 4 or 5 inches of leaves on top of the space just to try to suffocate the weeds and keep the soil nice and moist. So I'm ready to plant. Yeah, and it's free. The leaves were already in my yard, so that was a bonus. Well, I was going to say I used straw last year, but the straw actually had seeds in it, so I was constantly plucking out grass from my garden.
Yeah, you were sprouting seed or whatever it was. Yeah.
Whatever it was sprouting, it wasn't good. It was kind of counterproductive, so the leaves are working much better and they're free, so that's nice.
Hey y'all, I'm Mel, and you are listening to Wilma the Wonder Hen. Are you a chicken mouth loving mama or daddy? Together we'll dive into the latest poultry keeping adventures, chat about everyday life, with a generous mix of some hilarious stories. Bringing you fascinating interviews with poultry owners from all over. You'll find tips and basic advice from your local veterinarian, along with new chicken keeping gadgets and reviews. I'm going to see what Mr. Jangles and Wilma has to say about that. We're going to encourage and help you build a stronger, healthier flock. Let's go see what Mr. Jangles and Wilma is up to. Let's go let these heifers out. Okay, today's guest is Catherine. Catherine happens to be my child. She is no longer a child. She is a grown adult, and we are super excited to have her with us today because she's actually very knowledgeable in the gardening and all those good homesteading things. So today she's going to share with us a little bit about what moved her towards purchasing the place that she has now and the things that she does to help with sustainability and her future plans. So welcome, Catherine. We are so excited to have you with us.
Thank you. I'm glad to be back again. I enjoyed the first time I was here.
Yes, if you didn't know, Catherine has a prior podcast episode all about how she bought auction chickens and how that worked out. And yeah, so usually I'll tag that in the show notes and you can go listen to what not to do in getting new chickens.
Yes, I made lots of mistakes.
But we are so grateful to have you with us. I know you're very, very busy. If you could give our listeners just a little bit of a background of what you do, who you are, those kind of things.
Right now, I am working full-time as a nurse practitioner, serving veterans in our community. At home, I have about 14 chickens, 3 dogs, and a cat. And we live on about 12 acres in a rural area in East Tennessee.
So what made you choose the land that you have? I mean, did you have in mind things that you wanted to get out of the land that you were going to get, or plans of what you... I know you're a planner because I've seen your garden planner. Her garden planner is stellar.
It's a little
like when we go back and forth about gardening and seeds and things to try or whatever, she has these diagrams of how she plans out her garden. I mean, I do to a point, but hers is it's pretty intense. So
I like to visualize things on paper. I don't like to just have the plan in my head because it just feels so cluttered in my head, but it really helps me if I write it down, and so that's why I draw all the diagrams.
No, I think your diagrams are great, though. I'm going to implement some of that stuff because I'm going to add a bunch of new seeds and some beds, so got to figure all that stuff out.
And it definitely helps, too, if you have a whole lot of things that you want to plant because sometimes you can forget about things if you don't write them down. Well, I do. And also with interplanting too, so you know what can go next to each other and what you maybe shouldn't put next to each other.
So going back to the original question, so what was on your mind? No, save all those great tips. What was on your mind prior to y'all picking what you picked? Like, what did you envision?
Well, we definitely wanted a lot of land because I wanted lots of animals, farm animals. Of course, we already had chickens at that point, but we only had maybe, I don't know, 6 or 10. We didn't have very many at that point. So we wanted more land to be able to expand with the chickens and then maybe consider getting like goats or horses or something at that time. We wanted more land. And then, of course, the gardening aspect of it too. I wanted to be able to have our fruit trees and have more crops that would come back each year, like the blueberries and strawberries and blackberries and all those things. And where we lived before, we were in the city a little bit. I mean, it wasn't as rural as it is now, but it wasn't really a great place to have all those animals and plant like a food type forest that I want here.
So you do plan on getting other animals?
Not so much anymore, probably not.
No.
No, we really like to travel and we found that having all these animals is nice until you want to leave.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
I mean, you can't even go to the bathroom without one. Forget about planning any type of vacation.
Yeah, maybe somewhere in the future. And plus the land that we ended up buying, not great for farming necessarily because it has a lot of hills. It's quite steep in some areas, so it would be really difficult to keep like horses or cattle on. You could probably goats would be fine, I'm sure, or sheep, but the things that I originally wanted, I don't think that they'll really work out here.
So, for someone who is looking to find a piece of property to be more sustainable, originally when you got your place, is that what you were thinking about as being sustainable? Or you just thought like the idea of the larger area, more privacy, more of a freedom? So what was kind of like I know you said your main goal at that time was to, get all these animals. And then of course you realized that you wanted to be more free and travel more. And that was going to be difficult. What could you offer someone advice on ways that, tips of what to look for or, if they're going to start their own little homestead? I mean, you don't need 12 acres like you
No.
have. I mean, you could start in a smaller way. So what are some tips that you could give people maybe to be sustainable on where they already live?
So, as far as sustainability, like growing your own food, I don't think that there is a certain amount of space that's required. I think that people are very creative with small spaces, like with vertical growing and raised beds, and I've seen those towers before too.
Yeah, the
Talking
tall
about
tower
yeah,
ones.
there's all kinds of different options for people who want to grow their own food, and you don't necessarily have to have 12 acres or really a large area of land to do that. Whenever to answer your first question about what we were looking for whenever we bought this property, privacy was a big thing, and then wanting just more land to get away from our neighbors because where where we lived before we had some nosy neighbors and
Yeah.
they were quite close. So that and we were renting from family and we didn't really feel like it was our own place, so that kind of drove us to
To say, "This is mine, I can do what I want with it," and not have to be concerned with someone else and what they limit you, what changes you can make and stuff. So, yeah, you answered that quite well. Do you find there's ways that, you can help I mean, I know that you work for full time, and most people do obviously work full time too, but are there ways that you think that you can utilize the land that you have, or have you, and to add income into the homestead, to offset some of the costs for, having your animals and
Yeah, so really the only way that we have made income off of our land is by selling eggs from our chickens. And there's a few people from my work who buy those for $4 a dozen, which really isn't much, but it does help with their feed cost. But I know some people sell their produce if they have extra produce, or they intentionally grow more than what they need to sell at farmers markets, or even selling cut flowers too. So there's several different avenues that you can take if you want to try to make some income off of your property.
I know you were very creative though with some of the little Etsy shop, that little wood stuff that you had going. Could you tell us a little bit about that? I think it's very fascinating.
Oh yeah. So whenever we first moved here, the people who we bought the property from, they left a bunch of black walnut wood that was already milled into 1 inch slabs. So we didn't want to get rid of it because it was nice pieces of wood. So I came up with the idea to cut it into small sections and sell it as shelves on Etsy, which I've kind of fallen off the wagon with that. I have a bunch that I need to put on Etsy, but I just kind of lost interest.
Okay. But those things that you did list, like the cut flowers and, selling your eggs, and I know, quite a few people that's been on here, they've made syrups and stuff,
Mhm.
homemade those homemade products that they sell online to help adjust for some of the cost of their animals. But, yeah, I think if you can be resourceful, you can definitely, make some money back and put it back into your homestead.
Absolutely. And going back to the wood, initially I didn't really think anybody would buy it because it's just, a piece of wood, but you take decent pictures of it and write a little description of it, and there's people out there who will buy it. So even if you don't think, that your produce is the absolute best out there, or your flowers are the prettiest or most unique, there's probably a market, somebody out there who would be willing to pay for it.
Yeah, I think people are, apt to buy, like, local,
Hmm.
instead of these big commercial, you know, grocery stores. They're, even though if they're not as pretty as what you would see, in the grocery store. And I know there's a bunch of little farmers markets and all those things that you can, get in contact with, various organizations and be a part. Even like CSA, they have a lot of people that, do that too.
Yeah, they do, and I think some of that is those your followers build a relationship with you, and so it's easier for you to sell that stuff to them because they learn about you, and you develop relationships, and so they have kind of a loyalty to you.
Do you have plans on, I know you mentioned your garden, you already started thinking about that and stuff, and I am going to add a cut flower garden. I don't know if it's gonna be anything that anyone would even wanna buy because it's gonna be new, like, to see what kinda works and stuff. So, do
Yeah.
you plan on adding a cut garden, or is that just for fun? I know you have a lot of flowers around your property, but adding something that maybe you could sell on the roadside or something.
Yeah, I definitely have more than what I need for my own viewing pleasure. I think I'll have more than enough to try to sell some if I have extra. Just trying to test the waters, see if there's a market for it. I know there's several people in this area that are doing that already, but
Maybe you can sell that to, your people you work with and stuff.
yeah, I mean, you never know until you try. And what's it going to hurt if you're already growing it anyways? You might as well just see what you can share with other people.
Do you have any chicken keeping tips for our listeners since our last nightmare of an episode that we went through?
Yeah, well, I'm living another nightmare right now because my neighbor's dogs got into my chickens again and killed 6 of them just past week.
I'm so sorry. It just breaks my heart that it happened.
Yeah, it sucks, especially if they won't take responsibility for it, but right now we're just on lockdown. We have a poultry net that's electric, and as long as they're in that, they're safe, but we feel bad leaving them. They have more than enough space, but they've ate all the grass and clover and everything out, so we were letting them free range for a little bit, but they're definitely not coming out for a really long time.
Yeah, being your own property, you would think that they're safe.
Yeah.
I mean, not to be safe from aerial predators. I mean, we can't all control that, but
No,
predators that live next door, that's just ridiculous.
Oh yeah, and we've lost a few to hawks before, and that it doesn't sting as bad because you know that they're gonna kill them quickly and that their body's not gonna be wasted. But the dogs just do it for fun and torture them. And
so, you have any tips that you've learned since then? Any magical chicken keeping adventures? Anything you're loving right now? You got any products that you really love?
I actually found some 5-grain scratch at a local feed store that was a lot cheaper than the scratch grain at one of the big chain farm supply stores.
Is it at the co-op? Did you go to the co-op?
No, it's off exit 50.
Oh, that tells me everything.
No, it's literally right off exit 50, right before you get to Fall Branch School.
Oh,
on the
okay.
right-hand
We'll have
side.
to check that out.
They have a 5-grain scratch, and they have like a 3-grain scratch, a 5-grain scratch, and I want to say a 7-grain scratch with probiotic.
That's fancy stuff.
I just got the 5-grain scratch, and they really like that. And their cracked corn was also cheaper there. So my tip would be to check prices around, because in my head I thought that maybe the local would be more expensive. I don't know why I thought that, but I did. But it turns out they're actually cheaper.
Yeah, sometimes they are. The co-op here, it's a little bit more. It's the same product, like they have their own mix, but it's not any cheaper than the name brand. So, and I guess you kind of feel nervous when you've not, tried it out yet. So, but yeah, that's a great tip to try and find local feed.
Yeah, price check
your birds.
And I'm sure it changes all the time too. I know some of the big chains, they price match, but I don't know that you would be able to price match if it wasn't in a printed ad or online or something.
So where do you get the knowledge? Where would you send someone for tips on gardening? Do you have specific places that you always go to, educate yourself on more things, like you said in the beginning, like co-planting and, to help yourself gain more knowledge to grow as a gardener?
As I grow up through growing.
Yes.
There's a couple places online. I like the Almanac website, the Farmer's Almanac. You can put in your zone and it tells you about planting and like when to plant and when to harvest, and it just had a lot of details on it. And then also more recently, I found a website. It's University of Tennessee Extension, and it shows like the last frost dates, the first frost dates, when you should plant spring vegetables and fall vegetables, and like basically anything that you want to know about anything related to farming and gardening in this area. And they also had a really cool calendar that was for the whole year, and they had it divided with West Tennessee and East Tennessee, and it was color coded. And on each day of the month, it would be color coded with the directions on what to plant now, or if you should be spraying your trees now, like your fruit trees, and direct selling XYZ. So those are two resources that I really like to use.
Obviously, local is better. I mean, you can go to the Farmer's Almanac and put in your area and stuff, and it'll come up. But if you can find something local to your area, you get more of a detailed, like you said, all those things broken down.
Yeah, and also on the back of your seeds too, or whenever you purchase the seeds online, like if you purchase them through Johnny's or I don't think Baker Creek really has a whole lot of information on planting on their website, but I know Johnny's and what's the other one? Gurney's.
Yeah, Haas Tools has. I bought a bunch of seeds from them last year. They have a big blog and stuff too.
Yeah, a lot of them give you directions on, when to plant them, when to harvest them, and all the details of planting. But that University of Tennessee website I found was really helpful.
So, what is some advice that you would give someone that is just starting? I mean, not necessarily tips, but just some general advice for someone who really has a heart, really wants to be sustainable, really wants to live a life that's not so confined and maybe feel so vulnerable to what's going on in the world, to take back some of that control, kind of like they did in the old days,
Yeah. Well, I would say educating yourself is definitely one of the most important things that you can do. Because if you go in blind, then you're going to make a whole lot of mistakes. Not to say you're not going to make mistakes along the way, anyways, but I think really taking the time to do some research, watch videos, listen to people who are already doing it and take advice from them, people who have experience with it.
Do you have anyone in particular that you would say, you would recommend to watch or follow?
Yeah, we really like Justin Rhodes. I think he just came out with his own streaming channel. I think it's called Abundance Plus. But anyways, we watched him whenever he was just doing YouTube videos, but he does a lot of homesteading. His wife Rebecca does a lot of canning and preserving, and they have their own dairy cows, and they harvest meat chickens, they harvest sheep or lamb. They do a whole lot around the homestead, and they're just genuinely good people, it seems like. So they have lots of experience, and they're willing to share it for free on their YouTube channel. So that's one that we definitely enjoy watching. But Roots and Refugee is another one. I think her name's Jess. We like watching her and her husband and kids. But YouTube has an abundance of homesteaders on there who are willing to share their experience and advice for people who are just starting out.
Yeah, that was really good, though. That's a lot of places that people can go. Do you have any plans for the future? Is there anything different that you want to add? That I know you said that you really weren't interested in adding, too many more animals, going to stick with the chickens, but do you have any other vision? Like, are you just living your life?
Yeah, I definitely have vision as far as the gardening goes, and the plants, the flowers, the perennials, trying new annuals, getting our fruit trees established, which we already have a couple mature peach trees, mature cherry tree, and a peach tree, or I'm sorry, a pear tree. The pear tree's shaded out, and it's never bared fruit. But anyways, we're really wanting to work on getting our more strawberries, blackberries, blueberries, those kinds of things that come back each year that you really don't have to put a whole lot of thought into other than, fertilizing them and trimming them and just, routine maintenance. But gardening, I really want to focus on the animals, like you said, not so much. What we have is we're maxed out.
Yeah.
I don't want any more animal chores right now, but I really wish that spring would just get here because I'm excited to try some new flowers, and I've got new vegetables to try. But basically just expanding on our garden Also, we've been clearing a lot of trees and a lot of land, so we have a lot of bare soil. So we're wanting to get that planted in to help with prevent erosion and keep our soil where it's at and not down in the ditch down the road.
Yeah, I also want to just mention that last year was the first year that I added in the cardboard in between my rows and my big garden. And I got this idea from Catherine. And when I shared this on my Instagram, Haas Tools, which is the some where I bought some of the seeds and stuff from last year, they actually were so excited. They shared it, and then they like shared it on all of their platforms with the cardboard. So where did that idea come from? Did you have? Is this your original thought?
No, this idea came from my husband's mama, his grandmother.
My father-in-law, who he's pretty, I think he's like 70, 71 or something, maybe 60, late 60s. And he was so excited about when I first went out there and I started laying the cardboard, which seems simple. Like I'm sure lots of people know that, but he has been a gardener and, out in the hay fields for years and years and years. That's all that's what he does. That's who he was. He was like looking at me like, "What are you doing?" And even like his brother and all them, they had always been, out in the garden and stuff. They thought I was a lunatic because I was laying out. I didn't have big sheets of cardboard, so I kind of pieced together a bunch of cardboard and then put like little rocks on it so it didn't blow away. And they thought I was insane. But after, a garden started growing and then we barely had any weeds and they were like, wow, this is so cool. So now this year, this whole winter time, they've been collecting cardboard from, different, if they got a new refrigerator or whatever, they just put it away. And, he was like, we got more cardboard for this coming year. And I was like, yeah. So,
That is
even
awesome.
that small little tip, so that the tips that you share are very useful to many people because, who would have thought? I mean, like I said, probably lots of people use that, but wow, so yeah, so we appreciate that.
She's got lots of tips and tricks with plants, and she's raised the garden for a really, really long, long time. They preserve a lot too. They preserve.
I mean, last year was my very first year of canning. For my birthday, I asked for a canner. So I got a pressure cooker and, all the little things that go with it. It was very exciting. So
That is.
do you plan on getting into canning since you're going to grow, lots of cherries and, different types of fruit and stuff?
I don't know. I guess it just depends on how much we get. Well, last year we had a late frost and it killed all of
Oh,
our
yeah.
cherries and our peaches. So I'm hoping that we don't get a late frost and that we can actually get some fruit this year because the year before last, the squirrels robbed all of them and we didn't get a single peach.
I know last year my cherry tree, it killed it. It was all getting ready to bloom and then it killed all of the fruit. So,
But I'd be open to try some canning if we have an abundance of fruit and or vegetables.
I think it's fun. I can't wait. But I'm super excited for my garden.
I know, I'm too. I wish it would just be spring already. I got some red onions that I'm wanting to plant, but I should have planted them in the fall. I'm going to try spring planting them, see how it goes.
So we appreciate you and all of your advice. I think it's great though because you are in the younger bracket, you're not babies, but you're not middle age, and I think y'all have done an amazing job with, your land and your animals, and I know that y'all both have very good jobs and you went to school and are very, very smart. So, she's rolling her eyes, but she is. She's a genius, but I could be biased. But yeah, for your age, that gives people hope. It's never too late and it's never too early to kind of, plan ahead for your own little space in the world.
Mm-hmm.
But we are so grateful that you gave us a little bit of your time and some very good tips there. Where could our listeners find you if they wanted to follow you? I know you don't post a whole lot, but you do post a lot of stuff to your stories.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe this spring you can share a little bit more and help those out that are newbies or maybe want to learn a new trick or two. So where can we find you?
Yeah, I'm like you said, I'm on Instagram. My name, I think, is cat_Hensley. But like you said, I don't really make a lot of posts necessarily, but I do put a lot of stuff on my story, and I have a highlight for Homestead, and then also for my plants and for my animals too.
Yeah, I peeped all that. Some good stuff. Plus, she lives in this really beautiful cabin, so it makes all of her photos look like one of those professional, beautiful Instagram accounts that we've talked about before on our podcast that we will never be.
We have nice views.
We just be who we are. So,
Well,
but we appreciate you, and we do love you. And we'll see you next time.
Okay.
Bye now.
Love you.
Bye. Love you. I'm Mel, and you are listening to Wilma the Wonder Hen.